Welcome. It's great to have everyone back, and it's my pleasure to welcome Mike Brandolfino from Caregility. Mike, welcome. Thanks for
Thanks.
joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
Absolutely. Before we go any further, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and about Caregility in general?
Sure. I'm Mike Brandolfino. I'm the president and COO of Caregility. We are a company that has developed a purpose-built platform for virtual care across the whole healthcare continuum. And it's a little bit different in that it's not focused on one particular workflow, but enables hospitals to build on our platform and essentially deliver any virtual care program across the entire continuum.
Wonderful. So first of all, some very nice stuff. Caregility was awarded Best in Class again in 2022 for your Caregility Cloud virtual care platform, second year in a row. Tell us a little bit about that. And obviously, I'm sure you're gratified that you won.
Yes, and obviously we have to thank our customers for their continued support and faith in what we're doing. And I think it's, a combination of things. As I travel around and talk to customers about how we're doing, I think the biggest thing is that concept of not being focused on one thing and really allowing them to kind of develop their programs regardless of where they are in their strategy. We can start in the ICU, which is really where we started as a company in the ICU. But now, customers can use us for outpatient, they can use us for telestroke. We have interpretation services companies built into our platform so they can continue to use their own interpretation services. So it's really about that flexibility. And then the other piece, I think, is our clinical focus. We very quickly in our life cycle added a team of clinical nurses and changed our mindset around how we develop technology to really be focused about how it impacts the caregivers in their environment and trying to do things that really make it easier for them.
Yeah, I think that's so smart. We all know that clinicians are at the core of what needs to be done in healthcare, what needs to be taken care of, and things that need to be changed. So your company also participated in our Innovator Awards program. Tell us a little bit about what you'd like our audience to know about how you strive to deliver the best experience for providers and for patients. It's a great story to share.
Thanks. Well, I think the Innovation Award thing was really focused on bandwidth and bandwidth management as it relates to virtual care, which is critical. And that really got our focus during the height of COVID when, kind of interesting, we had a customer call up and say, someone was trying to do a telehealth session from a national park over a satellite link up and the quality wasn't good. And we're like, really? But what it brought to our attention was this concern about the bandwidth available in rural areas, but also within the hospital environment. So we started looking at ways that we can adapt to the bandwidth available and provide the best experience possible. And in an outpatient environment, that best experience might be keeping the call up, but dropping it to audio, right? Because you just don't want the call to disconnect. So we spent a lot of time developing that bandwidth technology, but what it's really morphed into is something we're talking about now, which is inpatient engagement, inpatient virtual engagement, IV kind of for short, because what we're hearing from customers is they want video in every room. They want a camera and microphone in every room because there's so many inpatient programs that they want to support. And, so that bandwidth piece ties in, but now we're really helping, focusing on that IV kind of scenario where how do you help our customers be able to deploy technology in every room and then support different virtual care programs. One of the big topics that's come up is the idea of Tele-Nursing and this hybrid solution of care by the bedside, but augmented by care remotely. And, there's so many ways that can be implemented in an environment, but it really requires a couple of things. One, it really makes sense to have a central platform. So if you have one platform that all of these devices hang off of, that makes a consistent experience. Also, you're now managing a fleet. Before you might have been managing a handful of carts and maybe 100 wall systems. And now if you have thousands of devices across your whole health system, how do you manage that? So there's fleet management that's associated with that. And then we think one of the most important thing is how are you managing access to those devices? You can't just, slap a USB camera on a PC in a wall and think that that's a virtual care solution. How are you making sure that, the doctor that has 6 patients on the second floor can only round into those 6 rooms? How do you make sure that the behavioral health person can only get into their rooms? And also measure what the devices are being used for. So, our focus with Ivy is really all around, providing that inpatient engagement in every room or every available scenario within the health system.
So this is fascinating to me because it's a combination of technology and strategy, right? It's not just get technology, it's how you think about technology and how you deploy it, how providers deploy it. What kinds of thought processes helped you and your colleagues at Caregility to develop your platform in this intelligent way to provide what you general folks call intelligent bandwidth?
I have to give credit to our clinical team. Wendy Dibert, who heads up our clinical team, really changed the way we think about development and approach issues within the health system. So, our development guys would come up with a great technology for doing something. And Wendy's like, no, you don't understand. A nurse is not going to, spend the time to do that. She needs to get in there, do what she needs to do and get out. Or she's really having problems, or they are really having problems with being able to take the vital signs and get that into the system. So if you could do something to help there, that's what's important. So all of our really design is around taking into consideration the caregiver's involvement, of course, the patient experience as well. But I think if we took care of the caregiver's environment and experience, we are by default going to be taking care of the patient's experience.
Yeah.
So that's really what's been driving a lot of how we developed our platform, even our devices. When you walk into a room, the caregivers don't want to fiddle with a remote control. So, it's one button to launch a call, or it's auto answer if there's a device in the room, so the patient doesn't have to press a button or something.
Yeah.
So all of those types of things were part of that clinical input.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I mean, one of the things clinicians, and let's focus on the nurses here, because nurses are the most, I would call them oppressed people in healthcare. That certainly they're the most interrupted. They're the most burdened by multitasking.
Yeah.
And you go into any inpatient hospital, and if they would allow you just to kind of observe on a ward, these nurses are doing like a billion things at once, right? And they've got so many in their minds. I can only imagine. I'm not a clinician. I don't play one on TV. I can only imagine what it's like. These are all such important tasks that they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And what they tell us is, my gosh, don't give me another device. Don't give me,
Sure.
Nurses, several years ago, because nurses had so many devices, we've kind of streamlined that. Most patient care organizations have, but they were carrying so many devices, they were starting to wear carpenter's tool belts. And that's sad, right? Like
Right.
that should not be happening. They should not have to look like carpenters. I mean, carpenters are great, but nurses shouldn't look like them. What kinds of strategic thinking go into how one optimizes the technology for workflow for nurses
Right.
and other clinicians?
Well, I think first thing is ease of use, right? What are the fewest amounts of buttons that they could need to press, if it's an application, what is the least amount of things they need to touch if it's a device.
Yeah.
And really it's looking at those important things they need to do. And is there a way to strip away some of the mundane tasks that are time consuming, but maybe someone else could do, remotely? One of our customers is leveraging our technology that we designed originally for sitting risk management, right? Watching to see if people are getting out of their beds. They've adapted that for a telenursing program where they've been able to call back retired nurses, experienced nurses,
Yeah.
to do things that the floor nurses have to do, but aren't really leveraging their skills per se. So whether it's taking vital signs or checking a patient out or checking a patient in, things that they could do remotely and interacting with the patient and getting that data into whatever system they need to get it in, thereby saving 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is per patient per day, for the floor nurses to focus on the critical tasks. And then couple that with, well, now if you could take these retired nurses or nurses that physically can't do it on the floor and take their knowledge, and maybe a less experienced nurse who's working on a dressing that they've never dealt with before can have that person remotely help them, then it doesn't become a technology kind of inhibitor or barrier that they need to get over. They're getting help, right? It's augmenting what they're doing. They're getting help. It's not replacing them. That's the other, I think, really critical thing about this hybrid approach to healthcare. I think there's always a fear that technology is intended to replace the physical caregiver, and that's not the case.
Right.
It's can we buy back a few minutes, to let them focus on the really critical things. Some simple things like, bed alarms can't be shut off unless the nurse physically goes in to see that it's a false alarm. But if you have a camera in the room and you could quickly pop in and then remotely shut off that alarm, that saves that effort, that time. So
Right.
it's all about, dealing with the shortage of staff, dealing with the limited skill sets because, we just don't have enough nurses, and really trying to save time so that they can focus where they need to focus.
Yeah, I want to ask you about two related things, and you can handle them in any order that you'd like. So first of all, how has the pandemic shaped what you're working on with your customer organizations now? And also, you have something called inpatient virtual engagement. How do those two things interact?
Sure. The first thing is, I think that outpatient telehealth gets all the media coverage. It gets all the love from people about, oh, virtual care has grown and we're doing this, call with my doctor from my home. And what's lost is the huge enhancements in use of virtual care within the health system. Within the inpatient environment. And what COVID did is really made that feasible, I think, from the mindsets of the clinicians and the patients, that you could do a behavioral health session with a patient and not physically be there. That virtual roundings actually do work. It's something that can be done. Telestroke has been around for a long time. That didn't need any extra help. But I think all these other programs, have really gotten, pushed forward because of COVID. And then another big one, and this will tie to Ivy, is this concept of the hospital room of the future.
Yeah.
And enabling patients. This is a term I'm hearing all the time from our customers, is they want to enable patients to be able to do some things when they're in the room. Obviously, this is mostly in the acute setting. And it's funny because we historically, hospitals didn't want patients to be able to deal with some of the technology in the room. But what we saw is the need for patients to talk to their families during COVID. And so they put iPads in the rooms, and then it was like, well, now this is complicated. The nurses have to train them. And we created an instance on an iPad where the patient can only press two buttons. One calls the nurse's station. The other one allows them to call their family, using a phone number or an email address or something that they normally would do. And that really freed up the nurses from having to go in there and initiate something for them. And then, of course, any of our systems can call that device and it auto answers. So they need the patient to know how to turn something on. And so what we're hearing from our customers is okay, we have, these high-end systems in the ICU, right? Because we need a 30x camera. It needs to be wall mounted, and we have other, some other systems, some are acute. But what can you do to help us get a camera and microphone in every room, right? And that really is where this IV concept comes from. Inpatient virtual engagement of any kind is what we're trying to support. And really what's kind of revolutionary about what we're doing with it is we understand that that's a huge investment by the health systems. So we've developed a technology and a solution that really makes it almost like a cell phone. It's a cell phone for essentially the cost of a cell phone. They can get a purpose-built device. So it's not just a USB camera hanging off something. It's got infrared lights for night vision. It's got 5x digital zoom, but it's meant to plug into the camera into the monitor in the room. So you're just not hard to deploy. It's fleet management. We have management tools so you can manage that all remotely, upgrade software, reboot them, see what's going on them. And they work just like our high-end systems in that part of this whole platform, they're supported. So that, COVID really led us and led I think the healthcare industry to understand that virtual care is a viable solution in almost any healthcare setting.
Right. And when are you, you're about to launch inpatient virtual engagement? Is that right?
Yeah.
What can you reveal?
What I could reveal is that we've had some customers piloting the device itself. And again, it's purpose built. So we've gotten really good feedback on its ease of use. I could reveal that we're moving away from a CapEx model. So we're trying to make it so our customers don't have to come up with a big chunk of change up front in order to get this service. It's really designed so that they could ease into it and deploy a lot quickly. And then I think the biggest kind of, I'm not going to say secret sauce, but the thing that makes it all work is we've just completed a revamp of our platform that allows hospitals to create programs and match the security and access down to the device for multiple programs. So for example, let's say we put one of these devices in an acute room, and in the morning, there's a behavioral health session, and then at noon, there's a virtual rounding, and then at night, they're going to have a sitter watch this patient because they're at risk of getting out of their bed or falling out of their bed. Hospitals can now set those programs and track that device and all the programs that it's being used for. So it's not just a device on the wall, it's a complete platform that allows you to track, how you're using the technology. And let's say you want to do a new program, you can then, simply create the new program, assign people to that, assign devices to it. So for us, it's exciting because it answers that question from our customers. We literally have had large health systems say to us, how can I deploy this in 7,000 rooms, 5,000 rooms? And without that connective tissue, if you will, between the application and the devices, I don't think it would be successful.
Exactly. So how does this all fit into your broader vision for the future, both for your company and how you'll help to serve healthcare?
To me, the future, I rather than say artificial intelligence, because that's a scary word or scary term for folks, I call it augmented information. If you now have a camera and a microphone in every room, there's so much augmented information that you could provide to the caregivers. Everything from, is the IV pole too far from the bed now? Is the bed at the right angle? Has that person been turned? Using advanced video analysis type of stuff. Annotating. Wouldn't it be great if a doctor could say, hey, Caregility, start taking notes, and verbally, translate what he's saying and put it into the EMR system without having to retype things. We've been looking at a potential partner company that is looking at taking the video image and coding it into a billable action based on looking at the video. Now, there's still a ways to go for that type of technology, but if you have the camera and the microphone in the room, our belief is then you could layer on so many other applications, and you don't have to worry about how to get that video or that audio from the room if you've already got a platform in place. So I just believe there's going to be a ton of augmented information data that can be captured leveraging the camera and microphone in a room if you have it.
Okay, and wonderful. And what do the next 2 years look like to you in your area, not just for your company, but also how technology is going to evolve in the next 2 years?
I think we're gonna be looking at what it's going to take to give the patients some ability in their hands to leverage the technology. I think we're going to see many more use cases related to virtual care. And I think the lines between in-person and remote are going to get blurred even more as people become more and more comfortable with leveraging the technology as part of the caregiving process. I don't think today anyone will question whether or not they can have a decent session with their doctor at their home, right? That's now, I think COVID has cured that concern. I think on the inpatient side, it's a very similar thing. I think one of the challenges is going to be, and there's a question here, I'm going to just pop in and kind of address it.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask
will the patients allow it, right? And
Yeah.
this is a big concern. We have a technology that we're trying to get tested, and it's about the risk of patients falling out of their bed and doing that video analysis of the motion in the bed. And there's this whole question about de-identification. Do you de-identify it too much to the point where it's not beneficial? Do you store any of that video or don't you? Does it get stored in the hospital? Does it get stored in the cloud? These are all questions that are going to need to be worked out. The technology's there. It's whether or not you want to use it. An example I give is I was talking to a group that was developing the hospital room of the future. And they said, well, we just want to let the family call into the room at any time. And I said, technically, not a problem. But think about this. If the patient is being bathed or if the doctor's in there conversing with the patient, do you really want a call to come in unannounced at any time? And they started thinking, oh, right. So I think a lot of this stuff has to be worked out. Many of our customers have modified their admittance form to specifically say that you may be monitored by video. So right early in the process of admitting a patient, if they're capable of course, they're having them sign off on that. But there are concerns of privacy. Our devices, the camera turns to the wall when it's not active to let them know that they're not being watched. So that's helpful. We also display on the monitor whether or not they're being monitored. So there's text. So there's things that we could do to let them know. And there are some very big healthcare systems that ask us to include technology that allows a patient to opt out or deny a call. So those are the types of things that will help, I think, deal with that acceptance issue.
Great. And thank you. I was going to ask you the audience questions. So thanks for proactively getting to it, Mike. I appreciate it. My last question for you will be, what advice would you give members of our audience in a very broad way, on a very broad level, as they think about technology? What do they need to think about in terms of the technologies that we've been talking about how they plan for the next few years into the future? Because there's a lot of technology out there, and it could be easy to get very lost in the weeds,
Sure.
As well as tempted by shiny objects. But what are the key strategic things that CIOs, et cetera, need to be thinking about right now?
So in my career, I've been a CTO, and people find it hard to believe that I say I'm not a believer in technology for technology's sake. Mm-hmm. It really, the important thing is understand the challenges that are being faced by the folks on the ground, and then try to find the solutions that best meet those challenges. And also stay away from the good enough. people ask me who our biggest competitor is, and I say it's those who think it's good enough. It's good enough to use a commercial solution that's intended for mass use because it kind of works. It's video works, right? Zoom works, MS Teams works, but does it really blend with your workflow? Does it give you the management capability that you really need? Does it give you the flexibility that you need? And in some cases it might, right? And that's fine. There are use cases for all these technologies, but when you're looking at a health system and you're looking at deploying, potentially thousands of rooms or across multiple programs, are you going to get the attention and the flexibility that you need from a good enough solution? And then the other piece is to remember, if you're talking about thousands of solutions, it's a fleet that you're managing. So bandwidth is a concern, management of those devices, the logistics of that is a concern. So don't just look at it as one piece, right? Oh, I'm going to deal with the hardware here. We're going to buy a Logitech camera and I'm going to put it in every room. Well, what about the management of that and the software updates and Microsoft updates and those kinds of things? And then how are you going to handle the management of getting into those devices and the security and tracking that, right? So I think that a lot of folks have during COVID threw in good enough. I mean, even I've heard people put baby monitors in, right, to monitor patients. And that will fix a challenge for the short term. But if you are thinking about long-term solutions and some of the things I talked about, and as the evolution of healthcare continues, can you leverage that same thing that you put in the room to do advanced video analysis, augmented intelligence, right? Can that tie in with your other solutions to really deliver that, hospital room of the future experience?
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. And I very good advice, Mike. I appreciate it. I think I would just supplement that by saying and supporting what you said, that what we're hearing from CIOs, CTOs, CMIOs is that it's so important now to really think about what your strategic objectives are as a patient care organization, not just like to buy things.
Right.
I think the era of let's just buy something is really starting to fade, because it's IT teams and hospitals, medical groups, and health systems already have too much technology to manage. They're already swimming in it and drowning in it. And they need to really think, so leaders need to really think about what is it that these things are going to do? What is their actual purpose? And you've given us great advice here with that, in that regard, that it can't just be, as you said, technology for technology's sake. And it's great to hear a technology entrepreneur say that because it's refreshing. So any last words before we conclude the session?
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's such an exciting time in this space. I know we're coming out of a tough period with the pandemic, but the silver lining on it is that virtual care got its light, and everybody realized how great it could be. And I'm just excited to see how our customers, take it in the art of the possible with virtual care.
Yeah, I think that absolutely right. And I think that one of the great things about the next few years is doors are opening,
Yes.
windows are opening, and that's good. So Mike, thank you so much. It's been really great speaking with you. I've learned a lot. I know our audience has, and our publisher, Matt Rayner, has returned to conclude the session, but I just want to thank you, Mike.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Mike, and the entire Caregility team for your support of this program. That concludes our live sessions for today's Trailblazing Technologies for 2022 and Beyond Virtual Day. As I mentioned earlier, we have a number of pre-recorded on-demand fireside chats available within this February virtual event platform. I encourage everyone to take a look within the portal to view these fantastic sessions. We will be meeting back for our next Digital Health Virtual Series. That's on March the 30th, and that is our Cybersecurity Virtual Day. So I hope to see you all then. Until then, thank you again for joining us, whether you're here live with us on February the 23rd or you're consuming this content on demand. A big thank you to you all, and we look forward to collaborating again very soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.